This is a Zexel injector pump from a Daedong or Kioti 3-cylinder diesel. It's got a problem where it wouldn't start after being turned off, and the issue is the control rack is stuck. It should move full length, so we'll strip it down and have a look at what the problem is. The first step is to remove the control rod to be able to get these retainers out. Like so. There. Then if we take the tension off these springs, you should be able to get a magnet and pull the little retainers out. Push up the spring, pull the retainer out. That one there. That. And then what we'll do is we'll turn it upside down like this. That one there comes out. There's a little shim in there which you can pull out with the magnet. Like that. You can see by the pattern which way it runs. Now, this is a little retainer for the spring. So to get this out, you lift up the assembly, so I'll probably use my magnet to do that. Once you get that out and hold it in the right place, you'll better get the retainer out. You have to slide it like so. That's the retainer. And next item is that one there. We have to then get the spring out. On there. And then finally, a bit hard to see inside there, but we'll get some needle nose pliers and you'll be able to get the gear out, the plastic gear that runs on this rack that causes all the problem. So we get some pliers in there. We better pull this out. That's the top retainer for the spring, which I'll pull out. And therein lies the issue. So, hope you can see it alright. But the problem here is these gears break. As you can see, I've moved this light a little bit. The gear's broken. And that gear runs on this rack, which has machine marks on it. So I'll show you that in a second. But these are the broken pieces, and it binds up the rack and stops it moving. So when you turn it off, the stop solenoid hits the back of this rack into the stop position. It breaks the gears, and after that it's unable to move back into the start position, which is why the tractor won't start typically after you've turned it off with the key. So I'll go ahead and remove the rest of these now, and then we'll find all the broken pieces, and then I'll show you how to go ahead and put everything back in the right order, and get the position of the rack and the gears correct. So it's difficult to see, but inside you can actually see where the rack moves, and on the rack there is a line that indicates where the rack should be, which is in the center of this hole. It'd be good to take note of that when you strip it, but I will show you that when I reassemble it. Spring retainer, we'll pull the spring out, and we'll be able to get the other gear out. Some broken teeth on that one as well. And I'll try to see if I can see where the marks are on the rack to line it up, but it's a little bit hard to see, but that rack sits about there. And we can see the timing marks, which I'll show you when I pull it down. But if I put that rack approximately where it's supposed to go, I show you the orientation of these pintle needles. Note the shim on these are just sitting in there, stuck on the oil. It's not missing. This one just came out separately. Retainer. So this is just to show you with the rack in the correct position. That is the orientation with the timing marks of the rack central in that hole. These go in this way, and it's got an insignia on the top of it. Nothing on the right, nothing on the left, and a number on the bottom. So it goes in like that, which has the cutouts down the bottom, and the groove facing towards the left. So that sits in like this. Insignia to the top. It's the insignia there. Spring, and we'll go ahead and pull the gear out. It's the retainer, and no broken teeth on that one. That one looks pretty good. So now that we have it all disassembled, this rack will move freely all the way. That's the travel it's supposed to have. And I'll be able to slide that out. If I turn that over, you'll see these ridges. That is where these gears run on. So I'll flip it over like this way, and that gear sits like that. And that rack moves, so when you turn the key off, pushes it over into the stop position, which is all the way that way, and it breaks the gear. And it jams it, meaning that the spring that sits on the other side of this, when you remove your ejector pump, it can't push it back into the start position because the broken piece of that gear is jammed, and it won't allow that rack to move. So the fix for it is to ideally replace these little gears. They're called control sleeves for the Zexel pump, or you can rotate them 180 degrees so that it doesn't run on the broken section, and reassemble it. The problem with that, I did this originally on this pump. This was the first gear to break. I removed it, rotated these gears 180 degrees. It worked fine for a little while, and then sure enough I turned it off and it wouldn't restart, and it broke the teeth on the other one. So in my experience, you're better off simply buying replacement control sleeves. I bought 3 control sleeves over here. They cost me about 50 New Zealand dollars for all 3. And these are them over here. And this is what they look like. Interestingly, they are slightly different to the factory ones, in that the factory ones don't have any sort of timing mark or reference on them, whereas these new ones do. It's very hard to see. I might need to adjust the video, but there's a little dot. You might be able to see where my pick is over there. And that little dot is required to line up with the timing marks on the rack. So on the rack there are 3 timing marks, 3 lines, there's grooves, there's one there, one over there, and one over there. And when you reassemble it, that little timing mark on the gear needs to line up perfectly with that slot in the rack. So I'll clean this up, and then I'll reassemble it with the new gears. Alright, so I've cleaned everything up. We've tried to get some better lighting, so I'll try to show you a bit more, but this is the rack, and I hope you can see the grooves on the rack indicate where the rack needs to be during the setup. Hopefully you can see those alright. And so if we look at the pump, and we set the rack as it would do inside the slot over there, those grooves, or those rings that you can see on the rack, they're designed to sit directly in the middle of those 3 holes. Hopefully you can see that alright. So it can be a little bit fiddly, but what I'll do is I'll slide this rack in, and I'm going to line up so those rings that we just spoke about, when I look at the bottom of the pump over here, I can see them, and I'll line them up so that that ring is central in those holes. And that's about the position where that will sit. So as I explained earlier, you'd want to find all the broken pieces, or the broken gears. I've found my 2.5 pieces over here, which are the 2.5 pieces that are missing from this gear. So when you clean it out, try find all the pieces so that you can make sure they don't get in there and cause any other problems. So I put this gear to one side, and this is the timing mark that I talked about on this gear. It has a little dot over here. Over there, and that dot lines up with that ring on the rack. Interestingly, the broken gears are almost identical, however they don't have a little dot for timing. So what you do is you put your rack in and you line it up so it's central in the holes. You get this gear and you slide it in, and you make sure that little timing mark, that little dot, lines up with the ring around the rack. So I'm going to use my pliers to do this. I'm going to grab it like so. I'm going to get my rack centered. And I'm going to slot it in. Now it can take several goes to get it right. It was lucky that, can't really see with my light, but no, that's perfect. That's that lines up perfectly, which is good. So I can rotate that, and that control lever now is rotating left and right. Now that it's all lined up, the next thing is to put the spring holder in. Like so. Set that down there. Like that. And then we put the spring in, like so. Make sure that's sitting in there nicely. put a pintle needle in. Now if you recall, we talked about this and we stripped it down. If you're holding the pump like so with the fuel feed facing up, these go in with that little insignia facing up and the number facing down. So it sits in like so. What you will need to do is put this little retainer on first, so you can't get it in once you slide it in. So go like this, go like that. We know the position of where it needs to sit. We're going with the insignia up, like so. If you get that right, we'll be able to sit that little retainer down, and that will slide into the hole when you line it up with the gear. Just like that. So what we've just done there is we use this as a reference. Now the other one, when that's sitting like that, got the insignia at the top, a number down the bottom, and when we're putting it in, you can see that by the shape of this, it can only go in one way. Be careful, it can go in the other way like so. You can get these 180 degrees out, but as long as you put it in like so, so that the little slot is facing what I call the back of the injector pump. This is where your driver's position would be, and this is the front of the tractor. So that's how that sits. So I'll go ahead and finish off putting this in. So then we have this item there. This rolls in your cam. Oh, that's the little shim we talked about earlier. That's the shim there. So that shim goes in like so. You can put it in here like so. And then if you get the spring to sit central, you better wiggle that in there. It can take a little while to get the spring to sit in there properly. The spring does stop this going in unless you line them up. So I managed to get the spring sitting central inside the housing, which then will allow you to slide this component in, and you know it's gone all the way home when it sits. It's about that depth, and I can go ahead now and reassemble the rest of it. That's right. it's all the way home. And then what we can do is take the bottom of that spring keeper, push that down, set that home, like so. Get the spring in like so. We get the rod. Again, we do the little insignia on it at the top, and the slot going towards back of the pump, and we slide that into the gear, which is going into there. Put our retainer on first. These are offset, so you can't get them in afterwards. Bit of a pain, but so it's all the way home. So it's all the way in. And what we do is we, the last item, make sure it's still got the shim in there. Try to get that spring so it's in the centre in the hole. So the spring's just not quite steady central, so it just won't allow this to go down. Unfortunately, the spring doesn't sit very well on that. Hopefully we can get that. It will go on eventually. Just a little bit of fiddling. That's it. We've got our last one to do. So again, you can see the ring or mark on the timing rack, on the rack. And get our new control sleeve. Find the little dot. Line it up. sure it's dot lines up with the ring on the rack, which is perfect. So the spring retainer on there, make sure it's nice and clean. So get our spring, like so. Get the right orientation. Bring our keeper on there. So and line that up. So make sure our keeper's still in there. And hopefully the spring's sitting in the right place. Ah, perfect. Right. So now you reinsert the keepers, those components there, and the rail. So to do that, set the rack like this, line up the holes, the slots with the holes, and what you'll have to do is you have to push against the spring pressure in there to be able to get these sitting right. So set that up and I'll push, and as you push up these will go all the way down and that locks that in. So line that slot up with the hole, and put some downwards pressure on it, and as you push down on it and you push against the spring pressure, you'll see that it sits home and these won't be able to come out anymore. So line it up, get that. Put the pressure down on that and push against it and it'll go home. Next step is to, this component here goes through there and holds those little retainers in, and so what you have to do is line all these up. And then you can get that, slide it through, and that little piece there pokes into that little bit there, sits like down and goes into that hole over there. So it's going to be a little bit fiddly. like that, and then what you need to do is just lift up the back section of it while you push it through. I'll do it with some pliers. And then when it lines up with the hole, you push it down like so, and that rod has gone right through there. These can't move, everything's locked in, and then you can grab your rack and see that it has full travel. This sits like this when it's in the tractor, and that is the stop position, the run position. And now you can go ahead and refit the pump, and you shouldn't have that problem anymore.